On my wedding day, my sister whispered, "You'll never fit into this family." My mother-in-law took back the dress she had gifted me. I left the ceremony in silence. Months passed. Then the entire town got an invitation from a luxury estate with my name on the gate because I'm just going to start from the beginning because it still feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. The day I thought was supposed to be the best day of my life turned into the day I realized just how much everyone in that family despised me. I should have seen the signs, but I was so blinded by love, by the idea of a future, that I didn't want to believe it. It was my wedding day, in a small town outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I was getting ready in the bridal suite at this fancy little venue, the kind that looked perfect in photos but had a weird coldness to it in person. The makeup artist had just finished with me, and I was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the dress my soon-to-be mother-in-law, Patricia, had given me as a welcome to the family gift. It was a sleek, classic gown, nothing flashy, but it made me feel like I belonged. That's when my sister, Haley, walked in. She's 3 years younger than me, the golden child in my parents' eyes. Haley always had a way of twisting the knife, and that day, she didn't hold back. She walked right up behind me, smoothed out an imaginary wrinkle on my shoulder, and leaned in so close I could feel her breath on my ear. Then she whispered, with this smug little smile, "You'll never fit into this family." It wasn't the words so much as the way she said them, like she knew something I didn't. Like she was in on a joke I wasn't part of. I tried to brush it off. I told myself she was just being petty, maybe jealous. But deep down, I felt a pit forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. Then Patricia came in. Her face was tight, lips pressed in that way that said she was holding back something nasty. She looked me up and down, not saying a word at first, just taking in the sight of me in that dress. Then she sighed, like she was doing me some huge favor, and said, "I need that dress back." I thought I misheard her. I just stared at her, blinking like an idiot. "What?" I finally asked. "I want the dress back," she repeated, her voice sharper this time. "It doesn't feel right. I've had second thoughts." Second thoughts? On my wedding day? I felt like the floor was crumbling under me. My sister just stood there, arms crossed, watching the whole thing unfold like it was a show. I couldn't breathe. I asked her, "Why are you doing this?" "I'm supposed to get married in an hour." Patricia shrugged, like it was no big deal. "It was a mistake to give it to you. It's not yours." The humiliation was suffocating. I changed into my regular clothes in that cold, silent room while my sister smirked at me like she'd won something. I didn't say a word. I just walked out of the venue. No one stopped me. Not my fiancé, not his family, not my own. They let me leave. Just like that. I drove back to my apartment, sat on the floor in my wedding makeup, and cried until I couldn't anymore. The weeks that followed were a blur of numbness. People gossiped, of course, small towns thrive on that, but no one reached out. My fiancé never called. My parents told me to move on. Even my sister never bothered to check in. It was like I never mattered to them at all. I started working more hours, picked up shifts wherever I could, just to fill the silence. Then, out of nowhere, I got this letter from a law firm. At first, I thought it was a mistake. The envelope was thick, formal. Inside, it said I had inherited a large estate from a relative named Margaret Lewis, my great-aunt, apparently. I barely remembered her. She was this eccentric old woman who lived in a huge mansion outside of town, the kind of place kids dared each other to sneak into on Halloween. I'd only met her a couple of times as a kid, but apparently, she left everything to me. The estate wasn't just big. It was massive. There was a mansion, a guest house, a pool, gardens. It was like something out of a movie. And it was mine. Just like that. I moved in slowly, taking in every detail of the place. The dust, the creaky floors, the history. The walls felt heavy with secrets, but they also felt like mine now. I started fixing things up, little by little, pouring all my energy into this house because it felt like the only thing that was truly mine. That's when the idea started to take shape. I spent months restoring the estate, turning it into something that could be a venue, a place where people could come together. I hired local contractors, decorators, planners. I put out job postings and watched as word spread that I was creating something big. And then I did it. I sent out invitations to the entire town. Everyone was invited, old friends, new faces, and yes, my ex-fiancé, his family, and my sister. I made sure their invitations had gold edges, so they knew they weren't being forgotten. The night of the event, the estate was glowing. Lights strung across the gardens, music playing softly. I stood at the entrance, watching the cars pull up, one after another. People stepped out in their finest clothes, looking around in awe. And then they saw the plaque. A massive sign at the entrance gate that read, "Welcome to Lewis Manor, a place for those who were told they didn't belong." Their faces were priceless. I wasn't done yet. I saw the shock on their faces, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt power. They walked in like they owned the place, but they didn't. Not anymore. The night felt electric. People mingled, sipped champagne, complimented the estate, and whispered. The whispers weren't lost on me. They all knew what had happened on my wedding day. In a town like ours, secrets don't stay hidden long. They knew I had been left humiliated, abandoned, treated like I was nothing. And now here I was, standing tall in front of a mansion with my name on it. When my ex-fiancé, Mark, walked in with his parents, they barely looked me in the eye. Patricia, the same woman who ripped the dress off me, stared around like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her face was tight, her lips pinched, just like on my wedding day, except this time, the control wasn't in her hands. And then there was Haley. She showed up in a dress that was way too flashy for the occasion, trying to look like she was the star. But I caught her staring at the name on the plaque at the gate, her jaw tight. I could see it in her eyes, she was angry, maybe even jealous. I had planned every detail of this night for a reason. This wasn't just an opening. It was a message. During the speeches, I took the microphone. The room fell silent. I could feel their eyes on me, some wide with curiosity, others narrowed in judgment. I took a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I started. My voice was steady, calm. This estate was left to me by my great-aunt Margaret Lewis. Some of you may remember her. She was a woman who didn't take kindly to being told she didn't belong. And tonight, I want to honor her legacy by saying, this place is for everyone who has ever been told they weren't good enough, who didn't fit in, who were cast aside and forgotten. This is a place for new beginnings. I let my eyes drift across the room, landing for a moment on Mark, on Patricia, on Haley. I didn't have to name them. They knew. There was an awkward pause. Then the clapping started, soft at first, then louder. People smiled, nodded. They got it. But not everyone was happy. Mark came up to me later that night, drink in hand, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't know you were capable of this," he said. Capable? Like I was some weak, stupid girl before? I smiled. "Well, you never really took the time to know me, did you?" He opened his mouth to say something, but I walked away. That wasn't the only surprise. A week after the event, I started getting phone calls, offers from local businesses, charities, even the mayor's office. Everyone wanted to be part of Lewis Manor. They saw it as a place of hope, of community, and I became the face of it. But that wasn't the twist that got me. The real twist came when I learned Haley had been trying to buy the estate before I inherited it. She had plans to turn it into a luxury event space and had even gone behind my back to the lawyers, trying to claim she was closer to Margaret than I was. The paperwork was almost final, but Margaret had changed her will last minute. Haley wasn't just bitter about my wedding day, she had been planning to cut me out of this too. She didn't just whisper that I didn't belong. She tried to make it true. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just shrugged, like it was no big deal. "I'm sorry you took it personally," she said. "Business is business." That's when I realized, this wasn't just about a ruined wedding. This was about years of being looked down on, pushed aside, treated like the outsider. And it wasn't over yet. Because I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. So, I sat on that for a few days. I let the anger simmer, let it bubble under the surface, but I wasn't going to do anything rash. No, I wanted every part of this to be slow and deliberate, just like the humiliation they handed me on my wedding day. I started making phone calls, pulling records, talking to lawyers. Margaret's estate had layers to it, hidden clauses in her will, old debts she had paid off for family members, secret trusts. I found out Patricia's catering business had been propped up by loans Margaret co-signed. Without her, Patricia's finances were a house of cards. And Mark? His new tech startup? Yeah, turns out he had been counting on a small investment from Margaret too. That deal died the second the will finalized. Haley? She was worse off than I thought. She had been dipping into family trust funds without permission, and there were emails, receipts, proof. I made sure it all found its way into the right hands, Margaret's lawyers, the trust managers, the IRS. Then, I sent out another invitation. Not a party this time. A public announcement, a press release. Lewis Manor would become a foundation for women who had been cut off, silenced, or betrayed, offering grants, housing, and support. Every dollar of the estate would go into that mission. My name would be on every plaque, every brochure, every grant check. I made sure it was loud and public, so the whole town would know. The night of the launch, I gave a speech. I didn't hold back. I told the story, my story. How I had been humiliated on my wedding day. How I had been treated like I wasn't good enough. I didn't name names, but everyone knew. I laid it all bare. I watched from the stage as the cameras flashed, the audience clapped, and my former in-laws sat frozen, trapped in their seats while their world crumbled. Patricia looked pale, like she might faint. Mark couldn't even meet my eyes. Haley wasn't even there. She was too busy dealing with the mess I had dropped in her lap. The trust managers had frozen her accounts pending an audit. The IRS was sniffing around. Her fancy car? Repossessed. Her credit cards? Maxed and declined. The final blow? Patricia's catering business folded within 2 months. No loans, no support, no reputation. Vendors backed out, clients cancelled. Word spread fast in our town. Nobody wanted to work with someone who had publicly humiliated their own family. Mark's startup failed, too. Investors pulled out after they realized he had been inflating numbers and relying on shady family deals to stay afloat. He ended up back at his old job in IT, working under a boss who used to be his college roommate. As for me? I wasn't untouchable. The attention, the spotlight, it got heavy. Some people whispered that I had gone too far, that I had ruined lives. Maybe I had. Maybe I didn't care. I had been the outsider for so long, I didn't know how to feel like I belonged. But I had something they never gave me, control. I still get looks in the grocery store. People lower their voices when I walk past. Some say I'm dangerous now, that I have too much power. Maybe they're right. But I'll tell you what, I never let anyone take my seat at the table again. And every time I drive past the gates of Lewis Manor, I see the name in bold letters, and I remember exactly what it took to get there. They wanted to cut me out. They tried to make me feel small. Now they're the ones standing on the outside, looking in. And me? I'm just getting started.